Thank you for joining me on this week's edition of Business Incorporated. You're welcome to the program. I am Bolaji Akinwale. On this edition, we will be talking about the postponement of the January elections and the likely impact these may have on the economy and, of course, businesses in the country as well. My guest is the Honorable Commissioner for Finance in Lagos State. He is Ayo Bileyi. We'll get to hear from him shortly. But before then, let's take a look at other business stories. The international oil companies operating in Nigeria may have to deal with rising costs of production. The Federation Account Allocation Committee shared a total of 7.75 trillion naira among the three tiers of government in the 2014 fiscal period. Data show that the amount distributed last year represented a decline of 150 billion naira over the 7.9 trillion naira which the committee allocated in the 2013 fiscal period. The committee, headed by the Minister of State for Finance, Ambassador Bashir Yuguda, is made up of commissioners of finance from the 36 states of the Federation, the Accountant General of the Federation, Mr. Jonah Otunla, and representatives of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation. Other members are the representatives of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, the Nigeria Customs Service, Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission, and the Central Bank of Nigeria. The Federation account is currently being managed on a legal framework that allows funds to be shared under three major components: statutory allocation, value-added tax distribution, and allocation made under the derivation principle. Under statutory allocation, the federal government gets 52.68% of the revenue shared, states 26.72%, and local government 20.60%. The framework also provides that VAT revenue be shared thus: federal government gets 15%, state 50%, and local government 35%. A breakdown of the 7.75 trillion naira figure for 2014 showed that the month of June had the highest allocation of 755.95 billion naira. September had 693.53 billion naira, and May followed with 683.89 billion naira. The sum of 621.1 billion naira was allocated in January, 641.29 billion naira in February, 641.38 billion naira in March, 634.72 billion naira in April, and 654.58 billion naira in July. For the months of August, October, November, and December, the committee distributed 611.76 billion naira, 593.34 billion naira, 628.7 billion naira, and 580.37 billion naira. A total of 7.29 billion naira was reported to have been generated in 2014 from oil and non-oil sectors. A breakdown of the revenue showed that the highest receipt of 844.03 billion naira was made in May, while June had 784.88 billion naira, and February 666.75 billion naira. Further findings show that a gross revenue of 540.87 billion naira was earned by the country in January. In March, it was 614.35 billion naira, in April 584.15 billion naira, and July 630.32 billion naira. The Federal Minister of Finance, the Commissioners of Finance, and Accountants General of the 36 states of the Federation have commenced the process of reducing the high cost of governance following the continuous decline of global oil prices. The federal government has announced its intention to buy electricity from private producers of embedded power across the country. According to the government, this is to ensure the availability of electricity to areas currently experiencing poor power supply. The Minister of Power, Professor Chinedu Nebo, noted that by purchasing electricity from private producers, the government would stabilize and improve the power generation in the country.
If you wanted to do exactly what South Africa is doing now, you need 160,000 megawatts. Nobody can do that. And the cost per megawatt, just on the average, because of the mixture of gas, hydro, solar, wind, and everything, minimum will be about 2 million. So what you're talking about is $3.2 trillion.
According to him, the government was considering a fast way of resolving the lingering electricity supply shortage in the country through embedded power generation. By this, less emphasis will be on the national grid, while a small cluster of end users and industries located in the same area would have power distributed to them from the excess produced in the localities. The minister gave an assurance that the government was desirous of encouraging those with excess power that could be used as embedded generation, adding that such could be sold to the grid after clearance with appropriate government agencies. Embedded generation is the production of electricity from a power station that is within a distribution network. By purchasing embedded electricity, the government would source for power from private distribution networks. Embedded generation avails the power distribution companies the opportunity to buy excess power of private organizations who are not dependent on the discos for power supply as they generate their own electricity. To encourage organizations interested in the model, Professor Nebo stated that the United Nations Development Programme was considering a type of intervention similar to the carbon credit scheme already developed in some countries. Oil exploration in the country looks set to take a further knock this year as rising extractive costs linger amid lower crude prices that have forced international oil companies to cut capital expenditure. Extractive costs in the industry is said to have been increasing by 10% in the last few years and is now a big cause for concern for industry players as it takes a toll on investment. Already, the delay in the passage of the Petroleum Industry Bill has led to the suspension of several oil and gas projects, a development that is also affecting exploration activities in the industry. According to the Department of Petroleum Resources, the country, which aims to ramp up production to 4 million barrels per day and grow the reserves to 40 billion barrels in 2020, has seen its reserves slump to 35 billion barrels from 37 billion barrels. The lack of reserves growth has been attributed to the fact that little or no significant investment has been recorded in oil exploration in the last 5 years, and the number of wells drilled has also been on the decline since 2006. Industry analysts have said that the ability of many indigenous oil companies to access finance from Nigerian banks would be limited, as many of the lenders are already well exposed to the sector. They are of the opinion that competition for financing will be stiff this year, adding that many of the oil firms would rather focus on production and development of their assets. Experts also believe that the number of marginal field operators who have yet to start producing may find it much more difficult to carry out work on their fields, as many of them require huge external funding. Experts in the Nigerian economy believe that the postponement of the general elections will have some cost implications on businesses in the country. In this report, we'll take a look at some of these implications and what can be done to ensure that we maintain some kind of stability.
The national elections, i.e. Presidential and National Assembly, are now to hold on March 28, 2015.
This announcement still comes as a surprise to many Nigerians, as the Independent National Electoral Commission had earlier given the assurance that the February 14 and 28 dates will not be moved. That assurance no more stands. Business experts believe that political transition periods are typically characterized by profound anxiety and uncertainty. Prolonging these conditions has adverse impacts on the confidence of investors. Major investment decisions are difficult to take at times like this. The tempo of economic activities has expectedly decelerated as a result of the impending elections. According to them, the quicker these conditions are dispensed with, the better for investors. This is a major impact point of the election postponement, a prolongation of the suspense. Investors need to have an idea of the direction of the country's political and economic governance in order to manage policy and political risks of investments. Some concerns have been raised. Experts believe that the circumstances and sequence of events leading up to postponement is prone to suspicion and could undermine the credibility of the electoral process. The credibility of the process is critical to the sustenance of political and social stability as well as economic progress of the country. The process needs to be managed in a way that would inspire the confidence of all stakeholders. There is a need to have an environment that is socially and politically stable in order to improve investors' confidence. Some of the impacts these postponements may have on businesses include the disruption of many plans, programs, meetings, academic calendar, and conferences. The rescheduling of these activities and the attendant dislocations will come at a cost to investors and citizens alike. At the moment, investors from America and Europe are keeping their eyes on Nigeria. They have described the country as the most watched investment destination among frontier markets. They're watching keenly about the direction of the political environment. Many believe that the election is key to determining whether or not the decision to invest in the country will be carried out. According to the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the postponement of the election will put additional pressure on the campaign budgets of political parties and the candidates for the various elective positions. There will be additional funding requirements to sustain the tempo of mobilization and service the campaign apparatus of the parties and the candidates. This would take its toll on the finances of the candidates and the political parties. The momentum of spending will have to be sustained for another 6 weeks. Players in the economy have been urged to make the best of the current situation and also make necessary adjustments and sacrifices.